process, because we are the best nation on earth. We've got to act like it. We do face problems sometimes, but the American spirit is the can-do, we-can-fix-it attitude, not the blame game, not the bickering game. So if there are witnesses who'd like a chance to say a few words in public, because you've been treated unfairly, in my opinion, and I would like to have this be an equal playing field.
Would the gentleman yield for just, have I cut off anyone's answer here today?
Will I be able to keep my time?
Of course.
You cut off the ranking member of this committee at the beginning of this committee hearing.
I cut him off a minute into question and answer after he'd exceeded his 5 minutes, but no witness here today has been cut off.
But, Mr. Chairman,
every witness has been allowed to complete their entire answer. I just want to understand, kangaroo courts is quite an accusation, and I hope the gentleman from Tennessee, when he uses the term kangaroo court in the future, will think better of making an accusation. No witness has been cut off. Every witness has been allowed to complete their entire answer in every case. But we went about 6 minutes before I asked Mr. Bateman to simply conclude. That's the closest thing to anything. So this is not a partisan hearing. I will not have it accused of being a partisan hearing. We have a website that the American people have seen doesn't work. We're trying to get to an understanding of why it didn't work so that it doesn't happen again. And these happen to be experts, and for the most part, we're relying on them to be the people fixing it. The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a hearing on a broken website by a broken committee. And the air is thick with innuendo. When the chairman discusses rehabilitating witnesses, that implies they need rehabilitating. When in some cases, the witnesses have perhaps already been abused, sometimes by leaks, whether deliberate or not. So let's focus on
reports from the Department of Health and Human Services, a number of about 16, as my memory recalls, but I'll get a specific number for you, as well as identification of threat information either provided to us from intelligence sources or from other mechanisms. And we are aware of one open source action attempting to perpetrate a denial of service attack against the healthcare.gov site that has been unsuccessful.
And we also heard today many times there will always be vulnerabilities at healthcare.gov, but that the security testing will never stop. Jenna.
Peter, do you see live?
Cherry-picking their testimony to make a political point that, frankly, it does not serve this committee well in terms of its oversight role and does damage to good public servants' reputation.
And I appreciate the gentleman.
I thank the chair and
bipartisan efforts. Mr. Jordan is recognized.
I thank the chairman. Mr. Chow, a week ago, the president was interviewed last Thursday and was asked about Secretary Sebelius, and he said the president defended his health secretary. I'm quoting from the Jonathan Karl interview, or excuse me, Chuck Todd interview, and defended his health secretary, argued that the website bugs aren't necessarily her fault. Quote, Kathleen Sebelius doesn't write code. She wasn't our IT person. Who is the IT person? Who's the person in charge? Who's the person responsible? Who's the one who signed off on this before it went public?
The person that's responsible is our administrator, Marilyn Taubner.
And did she base her decisions on the memo you sent her on the 27th? Is that right? Isn't that the authority to operate memo?
I think that's...
I mean, the president talked about IT person. Ms. Taubner's not an IT person. Who's the IT person? Is that Mr. Van Rokel? Is it Mr. Park? Is it Mr. Childs? Which of you is that person?
I don't know. I didn't speak to the president.
No, but he refers to a person. Who would it be? Who's the IT person in charge?
I don't know what the president was referring to.
Let me start with this slide C3, if I could. And this is the report that came, the final CMS final report came out October 13th after October 1st. Just want to read the first. MITRE was unable to adequately test the confidentiality and integrity of the exchange system in full. Lower down, complete end-to-end testing of the application never occurred. Doesn't that raise concerns? Did you know about this before October 1st, Mr. Chow?
I think that's taken out of context.
It's pretty plain language. Didn't test it, no end-to-end testing, done before October 1st, and yet the IT person in charge, whoever the president's referring to, somebody said it's okay to start this thing.
I say it's taken out of context because there's still quite a few...
Mr. Van Rokel, did you know that this, did you know the results of the MITRE testing before October 1st?
I haven't seen this document, so I'd love to.
Well, you got the fancy title. You're the Chief Information Officer of the United States of America. That's a pretty big title, and you didn't know about this before the biggest domestic policy program website in the history of this country ever is launched, and you didn't know about this?
Sir, I haven't seen this document.
Well, that scares us. Mr. Park, you're supposed to be the guy who's going to solve everything. You're Clark Kent coming out of the phone booth here. Did you know about this before October 1st?
I did not.
And why is it?
Would you like me to explain why?
I would like someone to tell me why you didn't know that end-to-end testing wasn't done.
It's not about not knowing. It's that, for example, the first payment to the insurance companies, the issuers, are not going to occur until sometime in the first part of January. We are still building the system.
We just had the system all works together. It wasn't tested all at once.
We are still building parts of the system to calculate payment, to collect the enrollment data from all the marketplaces, and to make that payment.
So there's more system to be built, so we can expect more problems in the future to add to the problems we've already seen.
Security testing is ongoing.
Let me ask you this. This to me seems to be the billion-dollar question, or trillion, whatever. Why didn't you delay this? You guys knew there were going to be problems. You hadn't done end-to-end testing. Some of your testimony talks, we hoped that the test would work when we presented it to the White House. Why didn't you delay this? Mr. Chow, why wasn't it delayed?
That's not my decision to make.
This to me is the thing. The chief technology people don't know, but October 1st is October 1st a date that's in the law? It's not. It's just a date. Let me cite you this here. The Washington Post article, and I know I only got a minute, but the Washington Post article I think is important. David Cutler sent a memo to the White House, says, you know what? Don't keep the political people in the White House, Nancy Ann DeParle, Jean Lambro in charge. Bring in outside people. Larry Summers agreed with that assessment. Peter Orszag agreed with that assessment. But the president says, no, we're going to keep Nancy Ann DeParle in charge of this. Kept the political people in charge. And your testimony, to the committee, Mr. Chow, you said this. When asked about October 1st, my marching orders were get the system up by October 1st, right?
Correct.
Why? If you got all these problems, why not wait?
I didn't ask why. I said that was my march.
And what I'm suggesting is the folks at the White House knew this thing had problems, evidenced by the testing that wasn't done end to end. They, for political reasons, had picked this date, and so for political reasons, they had to adhere to this date. And the end result is, Americans' personal information is put at risk.
I try to correct your perception of what this excerpt is from. It's about a long chain of systems that need to be built, and this is a point in time.
Mr. Chairman, my time is, I got 2 seconds. Let me just finish with this. We have asked, you and I have asked, Ms. DeParle, Ms. Lambro to come in front of this committee next week, and the letter we got back yesterday was they're not going to come. And they're the people we need because they're the political people in charge. They're the ones who determined October 1st was the date that needed to move forward on. And they're the ones who I think ultimately are responsible for putting at risk Americans' personal information. With that, I yield back.
Okay. Mr. Pauner, there were all these questions, and you seem to have an answer you wanted to give on this end-to-end testing before it was done. Do you want to weigh in at this point?
Well, I would just reiterate the point that the security testing was done early on an incomplete system, and the fundamental question is, what is being done now and how adequate is that to date?
Thank you. Mr. Davis.